What is a Skattie icon?
What is a Skattie icon? Someone everyone knows.
Someone who shapes our
This iemand wat ons cultuur
embodies our culture.
an untouchable demigod of pop culture. Well, me.
The thought of me sort of being out there as an icon is quite daunting, and I think possibly because I quite often perceive something like that attached to a responsibility, because there's an expectation and I would hate to disappoint. So I find it extremely overwhelming. At the same time, I find it quite humbling, because that's never been the purpose of my journey. I think the purpose of my journey has always been to share with love and sort of from a nurturing point of view, because I was blessed and received so much. So I hope it's received from that point of view, because that's essentially what it's all about for me.
Just talking about growing up, how did you grow up?
I come from a very sort of humble countryside. I grew up on a farm, and there's sort of a few cycles in my journey. The first one that I can remember was outside Robertson.
Okay.
My dad was a farmer, and I went to a proper farm school. So we were about 50 pupils in this small school. And I remember, as I was growing up and engaging with family and friends that were perceived to be more privileged because they went to smarter schools, feeling, what's going to happen to me one day. And then later on in life, reflecting and understanding that I was the privileged one, because we were exposed to so many things. And I really think that openness sparked a lot of creative energy, because it was about letting the imagination run free and stimulating things that weren't necessarily attached to formal education, but a liberation of mind and thought.
After all of these years working in different aspects, what is your definition of style?
It's once again, it's like you say, there's so many definitions, and the truth is as well, Lindiwe, is my definition has changed over the years, because I think it's a lot to do with it's a testimony of your own journey. And maybe in my 20s, style was color and texture and a very youthful perception. And as I've embarked on different experiences, it has changed. I think where I'm sitting today, style is such a manifestation of truth. You cannot take it away from the zeitgeist, because things are. We live in a very dynamic, fast-paced information world, but it always comes back to a sense of self, a manifestation of worth, and an expression of your aesthetic. But I don't think you can separate your expression of your aesthetic from your value system ever.
Do you remember the first time that you got interested in fashion?
That actually, from what I can gather, happened very, very early in my life. Apparently, this is my mother's story. She used to put ribbons in my hair, the typical ponytails or plaits or whatever. And she said that all I did all day long was to rub the ribbons. And when eventually she cut my hair off, and I would then start looking for any tactile surface to actually touch or stroke. So I think that was really the beginning. Going back to nature, I think nature will and has always inspired me, whether it's the colors or the textures or the layers of nature, whether it's the color of the sky, whether it's the sun, the stars, everything. And I think that's why my place of solitude in the Karoo is always a reminder of the greatness of nature and how, if we allow it, it really instills a great creativity in our souls.
Is there anything in the South African fashion industry that bores you or that you haven't seen that you've been yearning to see?
It's quite a tough one to comment on, Lindiwe, because it's quite often you ask yourself, if you've been around for so long, is there a bit of fatigue? Or is it because the shows that are still sitting in my soul were the first ones that I encountered when I started in the industry? But going back to that, when I started, designers was a lot more expressive for me. And I think maybe it was early days in the design economy of South Africa, but it was the days of David West and Black Coffee, still your Marianne Fusler's, your Clive Rundle's, I mean, to name a few. But they had the opportunity, or maybe the pioneering spirit, not to stick to the run-of-the-mill runway show. And there was the appreciation for maybe more theatrical productions, more off-site showings, more creativity. Whereas I find today, and I understand that we're living in a time where it's all about speed and get it out there, and you know, tomorrow we've got to move to yet another platform that's being showcased. But I miss the days where designers took time to really contextualize their ranges. We're moving in terms of seasonality from where we had autumn, winter, spring, summer. Now there are resort collections and the trans-seasonal collections. It's just too much. And I think the senses are becoming taxed and there's oversupply.
What would you be doing if you weren't in fashion?
Now that's a truly, that's a difficult question, because I've been contemplating that often, especially when I decided to invest my time in my own venture. And it's kind of working with a life coach or a business coach. The really first question is, this is your time, this is your decision, so you can dream, you can do whatever you want to. Perhaps I would be a writer. That's something that I've always contemplated. I love the solitude of sitting down and penning words. So that's maybe something somewhere. The other sort of journey that I've also contemplated is one of being a farmer, but not a farmer as in big farms, anything, but I think the kind of the opportunity to once again take a space and a place and to do something very sustainable. But what kind of farming? It will definitely not be vegetable, perhaps a flower farm, because flowers is very much part of my my aesthetic. I can't live without flowers. And maybe cultivating something that could be made into a perfume, because I can't see my life without beauty either. But I think you also realize at a certain point, where hopefully you operate more from wisdom as well as ego, that it's up to you to find a different cycle or another chapter in fashion, and that fashion, it's actually up to us to write new chapters, to open other avenues, and not to just stick to the discipline as it's perceived by the outside world. And I think, once again, looking at Salon 58, that's hopefully what I also would like to do, is to slow things down. And then, as we said, whether I farm or whether I write, I'm sure if I do write, it will possibly be about the language of clothing.
Are you fulfilled?
I'm getting there. I'm working towards it. It's something that I'm consciously practicing. But like style, just when you think you're getting close, the goalpost will shift again. But I think that's where we are. That's where that curiosity comes from again. Yeah. I just think as you age, you feel a lot more content about it, and it isn't that sort of, when is it going to happen? You know, we're not as impatient. I think as we age, there's a beautiful patience and acceptance that comes, and you, like with Salon 58, deliberately want to slow things down, because you realize how truly beautiful moments and memories are, and that you can revisit it as your kind of point of reference to taste and experiment with the new out there. And then the balance of the two becomes the fulfilling journey, but only to spark where to next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.